So yeah, so if you guys just want to go ahead and start. Oh, first introduce yourselves.
I'm Scout Dunbar.
Hello.
I'm Katie Cost.
Hello.
And I'm Barbara Hatfield.
Hello.
Okay. Yay, thank you guys for being here. So if you guys want to just start out with like asking, why don't you start?
Okay.
If you have any questions for them, like about their
Yeah,
work.
I
like,
do have
yeah,
a question for you.
Okay.
Well, I was thinking about like the relationship between all three of our works, and they all seem very process oriented, in terms of like experimenting with different materials and how those materials relate to one another. And I was like, your other work on your website too, I noticed you use different types of materials in your work, and you of course use like a ton of different things. So I was just wondering if when you start your work, if you have like an idea in mind that you would then pursue, or if you really just kind of focus on playing with the materials and seeing how they relate to one another and the page, and does it like unfold intuitively, or?
I mean, mine is all material based. Like, I don't plan my tunnel like ahead of time. I kind of go with my gut feeling and I lay materials down. I usually do like 10 to 20 pieces at once, and I try to make them all a little different so they tell a story, and so they each like use the materials a little differently. Like, some of my pieces are a little more eggshell heavy, some are more like pigment and crackle paste based, so I feel like the material really plays the biggest part in my work.
Right. Yeah.
I guess I would have to say both and. Some of my work is really has sort of begins with playing with the different characteristics of the materials, and some of it is what I'm looking with, or the forms I choose have more to do with the underlying ideas that inspired the work.
Okay. Can you briefly talk about what some of those inspirations are that guide those forms?
I'll try. They don't tend to be verbal.
Okay.
So sometimes it's hard to talk about. But I'm really interested in systems of order, and the relationships. I guess there are lots of relationships in nature, and that I find really interesting, and that play a part in my thinking and in my feeling about the work, even if that's not always apparent in the what one might call the product of the work. I'm interested in having the work be open, and so that people can both bring their own experience to it, but also have to ask themselves questions about what's going on with the work, why it might be important,
Right.
how can they relate to it personally, if they can.
It's interesting that you say nature, because that was one thing I noticed with your work when I was looking online as well. I noticed you like kind of juxtapose these like organic forms with gridded lines, and like to me I was kind of seeing like this dialogue between nature and like maybe man's industrial world in a way. And I don't know at all if that's like what you were going through, like thinking about, but for me that really resonated with me, and I thought it was like an interesting like contrast of like things in your work.
I think that's an accurate reading. I'm very interested in landscape, in land use, in land preservation, and I certainly notice some of those same things in lots of paintings. So, and I also, I'm not sure accurate, but I think that there's might be some of the same interests that you might have in mapping.
Yeah,
And not in cartography mapping, but just in a more general, thinking about mapping in a more general sense. I think probably all of us share that
yeah,
interest.
I agree.
I think that's definitely something a lot of artists find like pattern and inspiration from, because nature is really like our biggest inspiration. I mean, you look at most of the things in here and there's some sort of relation to the natural world. Can I swing the question back to you? It's a
Yeah.
question you asked, because your work is really unique and it definitely reminds me of psychology, which I know that
Oh, I do.
your artist statement like you
Okay.
related to, but like, can you explain like your process and like what that means to you? Like, does the process mean more to you than like the imagery?
Right. I think they both mean a lot to me. I definitely want to create work that is aesthetically appealing to me and hopefully other people. But process is also like very important. I never really know what how the work will look at the end. And for these works, it was like really my first time using paint on paper. So it was really about getting to know that material and how it relates to like the ink and the colored pencil and all the other materials I put on the page. So that is definitely very process based.
Can you point to like your work so that they know which ones
Oh.
are yours? And in the I'll put images of it for the video. So but just so okay. So go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I noticed in your work, Scout, what I've perceived to be lots of influences of late 19th century and early 20th century modernism. I saw lots of Matisse and Miro and Clay.
Yeah, those are some of my favorites, definitely. Especially
And-
Paul Klee.
But by saying that, I don't mean that I see it as derivative. I saw it as really positive, that those might have been influences, but then you found your own voice among those influences.
I hope that they read that way, because the last thing I want to do is like copy and paste someone's work. But yeah, they
No,
definitely
no, I
have
don't
had
think that at
huge,
all.
No, yeah, they definitely have huge influences in my work and the processes I choose. Yeah, I feel like I was born in the wrong era almost.
You do a lot of honesty, yeah.
Katie, can you talk a little bit more about how you came to the materials you use and your emphasis on abandoning what you found to be toxic?
Right. So originally I was an oil painter, and I realized like I was having a lot of breathing problems, and my skin was really reacting to like the chemicals in the air, and it would get better when I left the studio, and I really didn't want to abandon my practice, so I did a lot of research on what I could do to like better my own work and create an environment where it was safe and where I was enjoying the materials instead of being afraid of them. And I was working on a lot of studies with like diseases in cells at this time, so it was a really nice transition anyways. But I just started working originally with coffee and tea as like a way of staining the material, and I did more research on like how textile factories were dyeing their yarn, and I did a lot of research on just natural dyes, and I kind of created a line of inks for my senior thesis, and this is part of the product. So I really just turned to the natural world, and so my motif as well as the material really emphasize like natural materials.
Pardon me, those two pieces back there, right?
These two and the one over here.
And the one on the top?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I see a lot of like topography in them, like I'm thinking of like satellite photo imagery, you know,
Yeah.
especially when they find things that are kind of hidden by time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like when they'll take a satellite photograph of like the Sahara Desert, and all of a sudden they'll find dry lake beds and, you know, areas where, you know, settlements were, you know, and I look at that and I see like a lot of the similarity to like, you know, the I guess you could say the geography that's assisted by you know, technology, you know.
That's the
And
same thing that the kids class thought about your works too. They thought that that it looked like they were looking at a map and it was like the ocean.
Right.
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
To me,
Yeah.
this looks like a shoreline, and this definitely looks like a mountain range.
Yeah, that almost
Yeah.
looks like Cape Cod, like that one.
Yeah, but that's definitely something I'm really happy translates in like the end product, because even though the material to me was like the beginning point, my motif was all about biology, both the
Mhm.
macro and the micro. So
Mm.
like someone could look at this and see like cells or like this body of organisms,
Mm.
or it could also be something
Yeah,
from
dig it. Like that could be a close-up of somebody with like psoriasis, you know,
Right.
some
No,
kind of thing.
I really like that it leaves it up to interpretation.
Yeah.
I think that's something that all of your work has in common is that it's like there, and I think one of the things I love about all of your work is that it's open to so many different interpretations, and but it's so funny how if like the first thing that somebody will tell me that it reminds them of, I can't ever unsee that.
Yeah.
Like, somebody
Right.
told me like the top one of Scouts that it reminded them of like a football like face mask, and so then now I
Oh,
can
man, I don't even want to look.
yeah, yeah. So then now I'm like every time I'm like, I mean I could see
I
other
just wanna
things,
see
but
it.
That's really
but
funny.
no, it is really funny like how it you know, I think they are open to a lot of different interpretations.
And
Yeah.
Scout,
I think
pardon
that's
me,
a-
which one is yours, Scout?
These three right here.
These three on the white ones?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I also sorry, you go.
I just was gonna say, I think that those kinds of comments tell as much about the speaker
Oh yeah.
as they do about the
Oh,
artwork.
absolutely, absolutely.
Honestly, that's what
No,
they're
I
like.
totally agree. I
Yeah.
totally agree.
In Scouts, I see like a lot of similarities to like Basquiat's type of stuff, you know, where you had like a lot of shapes and stuff. They look like they're haphazardly thrown together, but you know that as the artist is creating it, there's meaning coming out of them. And sometimes it's nice that when the viewer is challenged to try to interpret like
Mhm.
what this piece means, you know?
Definitely.
Definitely.
Because a lot of my work tends to be like, I wouldn't say photorealistic, but you know, I definitely have defined imagery in a lot of my work, and never quite really jive with like what would be considered abstract. But I like when an artist is able to just go, you know, and create something from like in here, and just get it out there, and leave it up to you know the viewers to assess
Yeah.
what does this mean. You
Well,
know?
I think we all definitely have like playful qualities to our work, and you can kind of feel that coming through. I think like there's so much movement and energy happening in both of your works that I can like tell that you had fun making it, and I could tell that like you were energized because the work is very energized.
Like once you get into it, you're just like
Yeah,
Right,
it's
it
very
takes you.
playful and
And I noticed when I was looking at these pieces that there's a real vocabulary that that Scout has, that you have, that you're able to employ in various ways, like you know, the writer using the same words to say different kinds of things.
interesting.
You know, you can use this kind of pinky orange circle, you know, in different ways, and on numerous pieces, and it, you know, it can work for you. And the line work is, you know, has a similar consistency and sensibility on each of the pieces. And so that's really nice thing to see that you have those those kinds of tools or
Mhm.
symbols or, you know, just that vocabulary at your disposal.
Do you, because I think about this in my own work, do you both feel that when you're working, it's a lot about this kind of balance between control and chaos within like maybe the process or the image that's created? Do you feel like you're sometimes fighting your materials or like allowing them to kind of take reign sometimes and then having to force control?
I think it changes like throughout your process. Like at the beginning, you're really fighting the material to do what you want, and you have to learn to kind of let it go and let the material speak for you.
Mhm.
Like when I first started working with like eggshells and rice paper, like I really didn't know what I wanted to do with it, but I know that I wanted to include it.
Right.
So there's a lot of experimentation, lay it down the proper way and use the right like translation to like use it as a texture versus like an object. Like it is nice for the viewer to know that they're eggshells, but there's not really any straight way of the viewer knowing exactly what I'm doing. Like when I place it down, they kind of
Wow.
have to learn to like speak as their own substance.
Totally. Yeah. They definitely their meaning is transformed throughout the
Right.
process of laying them down on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And ink is a difficult material to work with, I'm sure, or at least it may take time to like comprehend.
Yeah, both ink and watercolor are, there's so much flexibility and at the same time there's none. Because, you know, I mean, once you put it on paper, you can't take it off.
It's there.
It's
Yeah.
there. It's, you know, it's not nearly as forgiving as oil paint might be, for instance.
It's like it can run, but it can't hide.
I think there's a freedom in that though, right? Like the
Yeah, it's a really delicate balance, and it's, you know, I mean, there's traditions of thousands of years of people working with water media, and especially with ink and Zen practice, and so the whole practice of allowing yourself to get out of one's own way,
yeah.
and
Mm.
but at the same time still be having a hand in directing. It's a balance that takes a lot of practice.
It's definitely something I think a lot of contemporary artists are struggling with, like not wanting to be derivative, but like wanting their work to like have that specific intentionality that like you're using your material the way you want to be using it, and like saying what you want it to say.
Right.
Mm. Like when we were talking, I'm sorry,
Oh.
when we were talking when you first came in,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, as soon as I look at that piece, I get like a connotation of like a Rorschach test. But the longer I sit here and look at it, I'm finding like so many other types of imagery hidden in there, you know, that I don't know if it's intentional or not intentional, but it starts to create like its own, like it's almost like that image is dictating to me what it wants me to see it as, you know? And I always like that, it's because it's like a challenge, you know? And it's really, really cool.
I guess I like that it's simply, to me, it's simply itself.
Yeah. Dig that.
When you have a fresh sheet of paper and you're about to like lay your first mark, are you more nervous or excited?
Well, I guess, again, it's a combination because both of those things are, you know, necessary.
together, yeah.
They're tied together and they're necessary, I
Right.
think.
There's something so liberating about having like a fresh sheet of paper, like
Daunting.
in your case, board and
Canvas.
canvas, this like open space that,
Hmm.
and then with your material too, like it's hard to go backwards once you start. So I
Mhm.
can imagine that being.
Yeah, it's always about finding a way forward. N- No going back. Which is, sort of how we live life, right?
Hopefully.
Well, it's sort of what's possible. There's
Yeah.
not really
Yeah.
any going back.
Yeah.
But I guess I also am interested to find a place of calm and focus as I begin. Because I want to I want the work to have that integrity in being able to be itself and not to bring extraneous distraction to the work.
Mm.
So you said that that it is an extension of like a Zen practice, right? You said.
Well, there's a long tradition of ink.
Oh, okay.
In Zen
Okay. I was just
practice,
wondering. I was
and-
curious if it was your own incorporating your own personal practice at all.
Well, I think it would be disingenuous of me to really claim a disciplined Zen practice. Although it's certainly a really strong interest and something that I have an undisciplined Zen practice. How's that?
Me too.
So
That's
very
good.
specific palettes. Like I know yours is like very watercolor and ink based, and like your monochromatic pieces are very soft, and your stuff is very pastel-y. Like
Mhm.
what led you to those decisions?
Well, I think, I guess for me, before this body of work, I was focused mostly in line, and there definitely was color added. I've always just had an interest though in like the subtleties of like color relationships, and with these works, sounds weird, but like I would sometimes photograph them and then on Instagram look at what they would look like under certain filters that had like a very, very subdued color palette, and then in a way try to incorporate that into my process, just to like minimalize the information, and just also I think it allows like some of the like areas that are filled with pattern to like speak a little louder. But now I am actually working with some brighter tones. But yeah, I think the subtleties of color is like just really beautiful, and it creates this peacefulness that I really enjoy looking at and working with. And also the subtleties of line too. Like I want it to all feel very thoughtful and delicate.
It reads that way.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And your color palette must be just so influenced by what's possible with the materials that you've chosen.
And that's actually something I've been struggling with because I first create the work that's very vibrant, but it oxidizes very quickly. So I've been working on how to make my work a little bit more light fast, and it's been a difficulty. Like even since these works went up, they faded a little bit, and I think that's something I'm gonna have to learn to work around, like or at least work into my motif, because I mean if nature is fleeting and constantly
Right.
changing, then
Mm.
maybe my work needs to be as well.
Something time-based about that.
Right.
That's kind of beautiful. I like that.
So what made you choose your colors, and your work is very minimally based, like what made you decide to go down that path?
Well, it hasn't always been the case that it's, excuse me, that I've chosen a more limited palette. Is to make really large, big, splashy oil paintings, and I had a really great time. And I guess part of what's more influenced the materials and scale and things that I'm using now is just an economy, an economy of space and available materials. And it's one thing to be able to be in a place where you can have half a dozen 6-foot paintings going, or it's another thing to sit at a card table and with a tablet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's part of it, just economy. And I also think that it has to do with I guess it just has to do with getting older and wanting a more contemplative experience.
That's interesting what you were saying about too, like the size thing. 'Cause I remember learning about how Lee Krasner started doing really big work when she inherited Pollock's studio after he passed away, and that it kind of makes you think, if she were the one that had the big space to begin with,
Who would
like
he be?
Yeah.
like then it would be, like husband of Lee Krasner instead of,
That's interesting,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely something to that it's the, the limitations of the space and the materials, but it's also just, I think that there's something freeing, right, about just having like the, you can make more when it's smaller, you're not quite so like invested in like, oh, this is, like you can be even almost just like more imaginative if there's, rather than if that it's this giant canvas, I think.
Yeah, you could be limited by the space
Yeah.
you have to work in.
Yeah.
I was.
Around like 20 small ones than one big one.
Yeah. I used to do oil color, right? That was like I always was a sketch artist, That was like my thing. And when you're a sketch artist, you focus on like being photorealistic and stuff like that. And I was a real estate broker at the time, and I used to work in like Soho and Tribeca, and this is when there was still galleries there. So I started meeting all these artists, and sometimes I would like have to show their loft, they're moving out, and I got a call first, and there was this one artist that I got friendly with. His office, his space was right around the corner from my office, and his name was Christian Vincent, and he had like a name and a following already. He used to do those pieces. He used to do long pieces, like panels, and he had like a real motif. All his stuff had that like 1930s Art Deco Cafe Society kind of look to them. People holding martini glasses, and his figures were all faceless, but they all looked like 1930s people. And so I started asking him, like, how do you come